Well, the Bible predicts that these are now these are just, there's 10 of them. We're just on number 5. But lest we end on the note of the horrible stuff of the tribulation, how do you get ready for that? How do we prepare our portfolio, especially our spiritual portfolio, to go through the fire? And that's exactly what I told you this morning. If you back up now to 2 Peter chapter 3, we're going to finish the 3rd chapter. We looked at the first 9 verses this morning. Let me just walk you through the rest of the verses. And you might want to underline some of these points, because this is what Peter says. If you look at Peter, Peter is at the end of the road. I see him, his gnarled fisherman's hands, his leathery skin from the sun. But those piercing eyes are still so full of such zeal for the Lord. But he's at the end of his life, and he's never lost the wonder of Jesus. He has lived every day since the Spirit fell upon him, consumed with the message of the cross. And now, one last time, he wants to keep his beloved fellow saints on track. And so Peter warns that the upcoming fires that are coming to the world are on the same level of catastrophe as the flood. And he says, just like the flood destroyed everything, the fire is going to destroy everything. God's going to consume this planet. So he says, if you are one of God's loved ones, I want you to rescue all that you possess. I want you to rescue it for Him. And so he starts writing. This is what he says. In verse 9, he says, I want you to be careful. I want you to begin to make conscious choices. And in verse 9 is, we should live redemptively. And what that means is, Peter said this. He says, don't forget in 2 Peter 3:9, the Lord is not slack concerning His promise, but He's long-suffering. He's not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Do you know what we should do? We should live our lives redemptively. If you have a life's goal, and we all have goals of some kind, you ought to have one of the goals of your life that you want to know for sure that there's at least one person you're taking with you to heaven. Because God measures our eternal condition in heaven by how many we turn to righteousness. And you know what? There's a high amount of people that come to Lord at younger and younger ages. So if you've never led anybody to Christ, you ought to get involved in children's ministries, because there's a lot of children that come to Christ. In fact, if you're a grandparent, you ought to be praying. In fact, I had a grandmother come to me this morning. Doesn't attend this church. She just came this morning to see the Bells and to see the family, and was visiting. You know what she said? She says, I don't remember the details. Like, I think my son married an unsaved woman, or my daughter married an unsaved man. I don't know the details, but I do know this, that the first grandchild that was born to them, she made a goal to pray for that one. Growing up, not going to church, growing up in that home where the Lord wasn't really center of the home. And she was just, and this is a visitor this morning, right in the aisle right there. She says, and my first grandchild got saved. And she said, I just cried. But she says, I've been praying for him for 7 years. And you know what? We should live redemptively. You should have someone you're praying for that isn't saved, that you want to see saved, and you should pray for them. You should share the gospel with them. You should send them tracts. You should encourage them. You should speak to them about the Lord. You should live redemptively. You should be seeking to lead someone to Christ, to be involved in the process of sowing and watering and watching God bring the increase. Live redemptively. Secondly, we should also be alert. Look at verse 10. The day of the Lord, this is 2 Peter 3:10, not only live redemptively, but we need to live with alert minds. It says, the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with great noise. The elements will melt with a fervent heat. Both the earth and the works therein will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness? You see, what Peter's talking about is materialism. Materialism is just living for stuff. Clouds our minds. And he says, don't be clouded. Be alert. Live, number one, for what lasts.